Good morning. These are our announcements for the week. A reminder that Reverend Jen will be on parental leave from March 24th until April 25th. While she will be available for pastoral emergencies, we ask that you reach out to the board, our member care committee, or the office for other issues during that time to allow Reverend Jen and Virginia to welcome and bond with baby Ada. Flower Communion is coming in May, and we need your flower pictures. Please email a picture of you with flowers to Carol Alphys or Heather Medaus. You can also upload them using the link listed in the happenings. What are the happenings? It is our weekly e-newsletter. Each week, it tells you everything you need to know about upcoming services and events. It is the place for learning about social justice, actions, and community service opportunities. If you are not getting the happenings, you can sign up for it using the visitor card posted in the chat or on our website under the News tab. Today's Inquirers session for newcomers is Faith Development for Youth and Adults. The session will begin at 12:15 using the same link as this service. Whether you are attending for the first time today or have been attending for a while, we invite you to get to know us by attending. The session will end no later than 1:15 p.m. Inquirers is the main pathway to becoming a member of Tree of Life. So if you think you might want to become one, give these sessions a try. Women's Book Club will be discussing Washington Black by E.C. Eduguin Friday, May 7th at 7 p.m. Information is in the Happenings, church website, and Breeze. And now we will have an announcement from our pledge team.
Well, good morning, everyone. So John, can we get the thermometer up, please? Thank you. Today is the final day of our Cherish the Flame pledge drive. Things are going quite well. As you can see, we have pledges of $207,862. This is a great number, but it only represents 50 pledges, which means there are still about 20 members and friends who regularly pledge, and a few new members of Tree of Life who still need to send in their pledge form, or better yet, go online to make your pledge. You can find that online pledge link in the most recent happenings. We would really like you to make your pledge today so we don't have to give you a call sometime this week. Now, please make sure you take a close look at the essential pledging guide you received in your pledge packet. Find what you pledged last year and make every effort to increase your pledge to the next level. For those of you who are new to pledging at Tree of Life and have questions about how to pledge or how much to pledge, please feel free to contact Judy Stetner. She will be glad to answer all your questions. Now, my friends, we are only a few $1,000s away from our $226,000 goal. I would really love to send an email letting you know we've made our goal, because making this goal will allow us to comfortably support our 4 core areas of ministry: caring and connecting, educating, community outreach, and worshiping. Thank you so much for your financial generosity and for everything you do for this church that we love so much. We all cherish the flame. Thank you.
Wow, pledge committee, that's pretty amazing. Come on, everybody, get those pledges in. Come on. Finally, we want to get to know you and answer your questions. If you are new to Tree of Life, we hope you will fill out the visitor online card that will be posted in the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself during Joy's.
Did you vacuum up my shakes down there? I'm really sorry, I kept forgetting it.
To join us for coffee hour breakouts after the service and for our Inquirers for Newcomers session. We are a friendly bunch and welcome a chance to get to know you. We welcome all who have joined us this morning, and so begin our service. Good morning. Welcome to Tree of Life Unitarian Universalist Congregation online service. My name is Sue Kasleski, and I am your worship leader this morning. Our speaker this morning is the Reverend Mary Dicken, who is currently serving at Meridian Street United Methodist Church in Indianapolis. Her sermon topic will be the liminal space of becoming. And now, our call to worship from Mary Dicken.
Thank you, Sue. Good morning. It is so good to be with all of you today. And I don't know if you all know this already, but in case you don't, I am the sister-in-law of Reverend Jen. So I am truly delighted to be here with you this morning so that she can devote all of her energies and attention to my beautiful baby niece, Ada Lee, and to my sister, Virginia. And I am mindful that despite my relationship with your minister, I'm a stranger to all of you. So it does feel important to offer some words of introduction. And as Sue said, I come to you today from my home in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I serve as a United Methodist pastor. This is my second worship service of the day. So it is a good day to be in church. I am grateful for the gift of technology that has allowed us not only to prioritize mutual care and concern in this time of disease, but also allows us to make these kinds of connection in the church, reminding us that the church truly is bigger than the places that we serve in worship in our own local contexts. So it is truly a joy and a privilege to worship with you all this morning. I also am mindful that I'm coming to you today as a Methodist, not as a Unitarian Universalist. So that means I don't necessarily know all of the ins and outs of your faith tradition and practices. I know mine. And I am really grateful for your generosity with me as I enter into your space. I will say your lay leaders and your staff have been remarkably helpful in all of the information that they have shared with me before today. But yet I will probably do and say things that seem strange. So thank you for your spirits of welcome and forgiveness as I do so. And so it's in that spirit that I offer these words of invitation, words that in my tradition we call the call to worship, as you do as well. Friends, in this moment, we are called by the divine. Out of the places we hide, out of insecurity and shame, out of the familiar and what we've always known, out from under that which silences love and justice, out of all that deals in death and destruction. So come and answer that call. Step into the possibilities of resurrection, of new life after devastation, of hope that defies despair, of pride and faith, of truth and love, of radical solidarity and transformative togetherness. Come and hear the voice that is calling to you and to me and to all of us, and step into this threshold of becoming.
Thank you. Jess Miller is our chalice lighter this morning. Jess, we welcome you to the chalice.
Good morning. We light our chalice today for becoming. Author Don Miguel Ruiz provides us this insightful quote. Just imagine becoming the way you used to be as a very young child, before you understood the meaning of any word, before opinions took over your mind. The real you is loving, joyful, and free. The real you is just like a flower, just like the wind, just like the ocean, just like the sun.
Thank you, Jess. Please join us in recalling our purpose. We journey as a family towards spiritual growth, freedom in faith, celebration of diversity, commitment to action, devotion to each other, the community, and the earth. Our story for all ages today is from our Spirit Plague program and is entitled A Cosmic Creation Story, and it is narrated by Heather Madaus.
Where was everything before it was here? Before they were here, where were the people we know and don't know? The other animals, the whales, the bears, the corn, the hills, the oceans, the sky, the sun, the planets, the whole universe. Before even the universe was born, all was resting in the heart of the great mystery. This mystery filled the dark nothingness with creative energy, with very dense, supercharged energy that folded in upon itself into a speck of matter, perhaps no bigger than an egg, like this one. It was seething with so much life energy that it could not hold itself back anymore. So once, a very, very long time ago, the fireball burst into being out of the heart of mystery and began exploding wildly about. Now, pressing into the great nothingness, there was suddenly something. Like the egg itself, this fireball contained everything needed for life. All was fire and sparks and great, great energy. Light and bit were whirligigging everywhere. But while the bits and light from the great fireball were going very fast indeed, a decision was made early not to go too fast or too slow, because everything now depended on them. And while they were very hot indeed, it was important to be very careful not to get any hotter or colder, because everything now depended on them. What great possibilities, what great adventures were to come. Galaxies couldn't wait any longer and spun themselves into existence, with stars of every color as part of their family: yellow, white, red, blue, even black. Oh, how they must have danced, danced, danced as they created sky for billions of years. Then, one very special day, one of the stars exploded again, and our own sun star and our Earth came roaring into being. Actually, our whole star family, our solar system, came into being that day, 4.5 billion years ago. Our sun star called to all the 9 planets in our solar family and tried to pull them in, close, close, too close. But they refused. They all settled in nearby, circling the sun. But our Earth and our sun held on to each other very carefully, at just the right distance for life to one day flutter forth on our planet home. And still, after all this time, every day and every moment, the sun offers itself so that we might have everything we need to live: light and heat and energy and food. And our moon positioned itself in just the right place to keep the waters on the earth moving, so they would always be fresh and life could grow there. And so it did. The very first tiny life beings came out of our Earth's oceans. What a spectacular world they must have known. great storms and earthquakes and volcanoes everywhere. After things had settled down a bit, it was safe enough for plants to come forth. And then animals of so many kinds, including the human animal. We all have put ourselves together from those wondrous fiery bits and light that came into being with the great fireball. That's right. We're made up out of those very same pieces that came into being over 15 billion years ago. Everything is made up of those same pieces. So you see, we're all truly related. We are family with everything that is. Because before we were people, we were the earth. And before that, we were the stars. And before that, the fireball. And before that, the great mystery. And we're still all of those things. When you look down at your hands, you are looking at the earth and the sun and the stars and the whole universe. The universe is in your hands. I wonder what the fiery bits and pieces are made of. I wonder if the great mystery is also made of fiery bits and pieces. I wonder what it feels like to be part of such a huge family. I wonder how we can take care of our family. I wonder if there is a part of this family that you feel close to. I wonder, who is your cousin? Who is your brother? Who is your sister? I wonder what happens next. What are we becoming? I wonder if there are fiery bits inside of you.
Thank you, Heather, for that wonderful story. And now our first hymn today is number 359, When We Are Gathered, played and sung by our accompanist, Billy Sager. We will sing the first two verses and then return to sing the first verse again. The words will appear on the screen for you. This is an unfamiliar song to many of us, so you might want to listen to it first time through and then join in. And here is Billy.
We are gathered for a time of worship and of song. Let none forget the joys and griefs that mark each path of life, and thus we reach for those who love. We reach for those who love. For youth shall pass and time is wise, and countless seasons turn. So day by day our years increase, until at last by life released, our spirits shine like stars. Our spirits shine like stars. When we are gathered for a time of worship and of song, let none forget the joys and griefs that mark each path of life, and thus we reach for those who love. We reach for those who love.
What a beautiful song. I always love learning new hymns and worship songs. So that was a gift to me today. So thank you for sharing that as part of this service. I mentioned earlier that, I am carrying with me the traditions and patterns of my faith tradition and ministry. And I'm conscious of bringing my full self into this space today. So when I preach at my church that I serve, I typically take a moment to pray before I do so. And so today I invite you to pause for a moment with me as I begin in that same way. Living God, may your word be proclaimed and may we claim it with joy for our lives today. Continue to speak to all of us through my words or in spite of them. Amen. So Fridays are typically my day off. And so 2 days ago, I found myself with a lot of blessedly blank space on my calendar. No meetings, no calls to make, no emails to respond to. And so I called up a friend who also had the day off, and we made plans for a hike. We drove an hour or so south of Indianapolis to Brown County, Indiana, which is a sparsely populated part of our state. I want to say there's maybe like 10,000 people in the whole county. But it boasts some of the most stunning natural scenery that you will find in the Midwest. And we had identified an off the beaten path trail to explore, and we found it thanks to Google Maps. And we parked and then trekked out into the woods for the day. And Adrian and I hiked for hours, miles and miles of a dirt path, winding through the trees, climbing up and down tiring hills. Multiple times the sky opened up and we found ourselves caught in the rain, whether we wanted to be or not. And eventually, after a few hours, we wound back up at the place we started, a little bit exhausted and a lot hungry. And so we got back in the car to head home, but we stopped off at a gas station called the Gnaw Mart. That's Gnaw. I am not making that up. It is in Gnawbone, Indiana. Okay. The Gnaw Mart, whose well-worn sign out front boasted the best tenderloin sandwiches in Indiana. And we can now attest that they have a right to that claim after enjoying an immensely satisfying fried sandwich on the rickety picnic table behind their building. And then we drove an hour or so back up to Indy and we called it a day. And when you stop and think about it, that was a horribly inefficient use of my day off. We spent 6, maybe 7 hours driving to the middle of nowhere and just going on a walk. And hiking itself seems a little silly if you look at it objectively, because what we did is we walked in a giant circle, ending up in the exact same place we started, getting sweaty, dirty, tired, and hungry in the process. So what's the point of it all? Of course, any of you who like to hike, you know that the point of it isn't about getting to a particular destination. The point is the journey. Yes, for very practical reasons, Adrian and I did want to get back to the car. That is for sure. But we weren't hiking with that as our motivation. We were hiking so that we could breathe the fresh air, so that we could marvel at the tiny little flowers that were determinedly popping up all over the forest, so that we could run our hands through the cool water that was gently flowing all along the path, so that we could enjoy the songs of the birds and the chirps of the insects, and of course, so that we could just spend some quality time with a friend. It was about the journey, not the destination. And it was a good day. Recently, a well-meaning church member of mine, Dan, asked me a question. He said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?" And, you know, the question was asked with sincerity, and it came from a place of support. I believe he was asking me in the spirit of mentorship and encouragement, drawing upon his own career experiences and recognizing how important it is to see who you want to become so that you can take the necessary steps to get there. He was asking me to envision the future me, my future ministry, my future life, so that I could make that becoming a reality. And it was a good, well-intentioned question. And yet, I'm not sure it was the right one for me. You see, that question suggests that the point is the destination. Some career or vocational milestone that I'm working toward, the goal that I'm setting for this future time and place. But as I alluded to earlier, I am increasingly convinced the point is actually the journey, not where I ultimately land. Interestingly enough, another friend of mine, Diamond, he had asked me almost that same question just a few days prior. We were walking and he said, "Mary, where are you going?" And it took me a minute to realize he wasn't asking about the destination of our walking path. But once I got that, I shared with him about some of my hopes and my dreams. And then there was a pause. And he said, "You know, you're already in transition, right?" And I didn't understand what he was getting at right away. But then he continued and he said, I see these things happening in your life now. You're in transition. You're becoming already. And I was a little speechless at his words. The aspirational conversation about the future me was a familiar one, but this one, he was pointing me to what is happening in the here and now, and I wasn't quite prepared for it. My friend then, he goes on to tell me about how he can look back on his own life and see those periods when he was in transition, but he didn't recognize it at the time. He told me that he wishes now that he had seen it for what it was so that he could have embraced it more when it was happening. Becoming. When I first heard that this is your theme for this spring, I will tell you, I immediately added some words to it. I am becoming blank. We are becoming blank. And you know, in this world that we're living in today, there are so many ways we can finish those sentences, right? Because life as we know it has been disrupted, and we know that there is no going back. Pre-pandemic life is gone, and now we're moving into this new world that is forever changed by COVID-19. And at the same time, our collective consciousness has been raised by the glaring economic inequalities that were made visible through this disruption. And also by the highly visible violence of white supremacy from which we can no longer look away. We know that we're caught between two worlds right now, that we are becoming something, even if we haven't quite sorted out what that something is. So as I wrestled with this theme, I really wanted to add words to it, to say what or who we are becoming. My instinct said, becoming was about this thing that we would be. But then that walk with my friend Diamond made me realize that no words need to be added at all. Becoming. That's enough. That's the point. Becoming is the thing. It's active. It's something that is happening in the here and now. And it's not about what or who we're becoming. No, it's about the becoming itself. So I don't know about you, but for the past year or so, I have heard a lot about liminal spaces. The idea that this pandemic, again, it upended the world as we knew it. So we now need to accept the fact that for a while we would be living in limbo, in this liminal space. Church world and business world alike found liminal to be the trendy word of 2020. And I learned recently that the word liminal comes from ancient Roman construction practices. Because apparently there was typically a stone that was placed at a door threshold for folks to walk across as they passed from one side to the other. And that stone was called a limen. So that which is liminal is literally the thing we have to walk over to get where we want to go. It is the threshold from before to after. And generally, liminal space, when I've heard it talked about, is presented as something we just need to tolerate so that we can come out on the other side. It's functional as a way to get from point A to point B. But what if it's important in its own right? What if the limen isn't simply a threshold to be traveled through, but is a place to linger and explore and just be? Richard Rohr, the Franciscan theologian, he describes liminal space as the place where we are betwixt and between the familiar and the completely unknown. There alone is our old world left behind, while we are not yet sure of the new existence. That's a good space where genuine newness can begin. I think that sounds pretty good. But then he goes on to say this surprising thing. He says, get there often and stay as long as you can by whatever means possible. It is the realm where God can best get at us because our false certitudes are finally out of the way. This is the sacred space where the old world is able to fall apart and the bigger world is revealed. If we don't encounter liminal space in our lives, we start idealizing normalcy. The threshold is God's waiting room. Here we are taught openness and patience as we come to expect an appointment with the divine doctor. That statement he made, get there often and stay as long as you can by whatever means possible. It's shocking because he is suggesting that this liminality is in and of itself sacred space that is worthy of our attention. So perhaps it's not so important what's on the other side of the threshold. Instead, what's important is the stone on which we're standing right in this moment. This is that thin, sacred space where God meets us, where transformation can happen. This is the place of becoming. So why wouldn't we want to stay here a while? And yet, the reality is we rarely think of this liminal space as a place to linger. We're always pushed to make plans, to answer that question about where are you going in 5 or 10 years, right? To figure out where we're going and to start getting there. We church people, we tend to be doers. And so we always want to set goals. We want to write strategic plans. We want to problem solve. We want to check things off our to-do list. We want that sense of accomplishment, that we're actually getting somewhere. But what if where we are is actually where we're supposed to be? What if this in-between, not quite yet space of becoming is the point after all? Our faith traditions are full of examples of the holiness of this liminal space. In the Hebrew scriptures, time and again, we discover God's people who are wandering in the wilderness, living on the margins of society, and yet finding themselves in a space of great intimacy with God. In the early church, the desert mothers and fathers, they opted out of the expectations and constraints of societal accomplishment, instead choosing to retreat to the hills and to just be with God, so that they could discover wisdom and compassion and even transformation. And still today, we still find those rare folks who embrace liminality, who deliberately choose to sit in the uncomfortable in-between places, the ones who meander on paths in the woods, who choose a life with room for contemplation, with room to just be present to the sacred happenings that are all around us. Embracing the liminal is truly countercultural, but perhaps it's where we might actually experience this becoming for which we long. Richard Rohr, he goes on in his talking about this in all of his wisdom to say this. He says, liminal space is always holy ground, but it takes a while to get those shoes off of Moses and for Jacob to realize that he had always been there but didn't know it. 40 days is probably a minimum period to spend in liminal space, which is why it becomes a symbolic number for Israel. One of the most effective ways to avoid liminal space is to be quick, efficient, successful, and goal-oriented, or to be super religious on the right or super correct on the left. In either place, you will only reconfirm all your crutches, your addictions, and false securities. If it is our temperament to seek security, we will run back to the old room that we have already constructed. If it is our temperament to take risks, we will quickly run to a new room of our own making and liking. Hardly anyone wants to stay on the threshold without answers. And yet, friends, I think perhaps that the threshold is the sacred space. So we must notice when we're there, whether it's through friends telling us or opening our eyes to the space that we're in. And then perhaps linger a while. Not just seek to get past it. And I know it is easier said than done, for this liminal space is full of uncertainty, it is full of discomfort and even risk, but it is also full of possibility, of transformation, of newness. And so this morning, my invitation to you is this: lean in to the liminal spaces when you find them. Lean into the fearful and the anxious. Lean into those times of transition, the times of in between. Lean into the becoming. Simply that. No more words need to be added. For it is here that we are meant to be. Amen.
Wow, Reverend Mary, thank you. Each week we take an offering that supports the work of this congregation in our lives, in our communities, and in the world. Today and in the weeks to come, you may make your offering in one of three ways, which are listed on your screen. Text to give, 815-332-0643. You may give online using our Breeze site, or you may actually snail mail check to 5603 Bull Valley Road, McHenry, Illinois, 60050. Indicate which fund, pledge, Second Sunday, or general fund your money should be directed to. As is our custom on the second Sunday of the month, we donate our non-pledge offerings to an organization whose work reflects our Unitarian Universalist values. This month's organization is for the Interfaith Community for Detained Immigrants, and we welcome Sarah Woleb to our online pulpit this morning to tell us a bit about the work they do. Sarah?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Reverend Mary, for that wonderful message. That was really meaningful for me. And I'm so grateful to be worshiping with you and to get to know your community a little better. I'm the Director of Outreach and Advocacy for ICDI, and I believe many of you know us well. We provide spiritual care to immigrants who are detained or who have recently been released from detention. And of course, that includes immigrants who are detained at McHenry County Jail. And we're grateful for your congregation's ongoing support with that work and with many of our other projects as well. We have visitation programs, not just at McHenry County, but at various other detention centers in Illinois and Wisconsin. We also organize houses of hospitality and accompaniment services for people who've been released out of detention, primarily asylum seekers who do not have already family networks or connections here in the United States. We also, especially nowadays, are accompanying many, many people in the Greyhound bus station in downtown Chicago. Lots of people who have recently crossed the border, who are fleeing devastation in Central America, especially due to the recent hurricanes there, loss of crops, widespread malnutrition. They cross our border, and if they have families in the Midwest or in the Northeast region, they're coming to Chicago first, even as sometimes as their final destination, but oftentimes the layover. So our teams of volunteers are there to help them get to where they're going, buy them a hot meal, which is sometimes the first meal that they've had in quite a while, sometimes even days. So it's very, very crucial work right now. And we thank you for your ongoing support again. If you want to get involved, we would very much welcome that. We are recruiting volunteers right now. So if you want to volunteer in the virtual sense over Zoom, we have opportunities for you. And of course, in person, we have opportunities for you. If you would like to help us to advocate for changes in immigration laws and policies that are so harsh and dehumanizing right now, we would love to have you join us in that as well. You can do that from home. And if you know of housing spaces that might be available even temporarily, we are looking to expand places where immigrants who are crossing the border or have been released from detention can stay either temporarily or on a longer term basis to get established. Again, primarily asylum seekers. And of course, your donations are very much needed and appreciated right now too. So I'm gonna add to the chat some links. I have a call to action to ask the federal government to end the influx facilities for migrant children right now who are being warehoused in tent cities. We're asking the Biden administration to end that practice and instead to focus resources on uniting those children faster with their families so that we will not have the need to for warehouse facilities for children. I'm also adding our own website, ICDI Chicago, so you can get links there for becoming a volunteer, for donating to our organization, and signing up for the newsletter so you can be informed of other opportunities to advocate or become involved in other ways. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for letting us know about the Interfaith Community for Detained Immigrants. I encourage you all to make a second Sunday donation. During this time of uncertainty, your generosity to Tree of Life is more important than ever. And as always, we give thanks for these gifts and for all the gifts you give. Sharing our joys and concerns is a sacred moment in our worship when we open our hearts to receive and embrace each other's lives. If there is something new in your personal life, an event or situation of joy or challenge that touches you, please feel invited to share this to help our community grow in connection. All announcements will appear in our newsletter unless there is a request to be withheld. If you do have something to share, click on the participation link at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand. I will then call on you and will also unmute you. Reverend Mary, do you have anything to share?
So my hand was still up from before.
Oh, okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Said, like I said earlier, I truly am delighted to be here because it allows my sister and sister-in-law to be with their beautiful child. So I continue to celebrate the birth of Ada Lee and hope that you all are celebrating with them as well.
We are. They have been a great joy to our community, and in this time of COVID to have a new baby. Woohoo! It doesn't get any better. We just want to meet her. Let's see, it doesn't seem up. What, Judy? Oh, I know. I'm not scrolling very well. It doesn't look like anybody has a hand raised. No. We will now honor all of those unexpressed joys and concerns that remain on our hearts for the space of 3 breaths. I should have said, enjoy the liminal space, right, Mary? Now let's pause for centering with Reverend Mary.
Thank you. So again, in my tradition, this would be our time of what we call the prayers of the people. The idea is that we are lifting up the hurts and hopes that we carry and the hurts and hopes of the world. And so again, in that spirit, I invite you to join me in prayer, in lifting up those things that are weighing on you today. Holy One, Spirit of life and love, you are always ever more ready to hear than we are to speak. And so we come to you in this moment with the sense that you are waiting for us. And yet we confess that we don't quite know what to say. We carry with us so many worries and concerns, and also hopes and joys, some of which we've been able to give voice to, but others that weigh silently on our hearts and are expressed only in the breaths that we take. You're ready to hear, but we're not quite sure what to say. And so we rest in the assurance that you know us better than we know ourselves, that you can make sense of our wordless whispers and the longings that are deep inside of us that we're still making sense of. You are with us in this space, inviting us to stay a while, to embrace the uncertainty, and to simply be with you. Today, we know that the world that was is not the world that will be. That much is clear. We cannot go back to the way things used to be. We cannot unknow what we now know. Our world is becoming something new. We are becoming something new. So may we have the courage to shed all that holds us back, all of the privilege and the comfort we so desperately cling to, all that destroys and oppresses our neighbors, all that keeps us from living fully into the people you created us to be. And may we rest in this space of becoming. And may we trust in your transforming spirit that is here. God of life and love, hear us today. The words we speak aloud and those we don't yet dare to voice. Hear us. Embrace us. Transform us. And simply be with us as we seek to be with you and with each other, to be together in love. Amen.
Woo. Now let's sing together as Billy Sager plays, O life that maketh all things new.
Life that maketh all things new, the blooming earth, our thoughts within, our pilgrim feet wet with thy dew, in gladness hither turn again. From hand to hand the greeting flows, from eye to eye the signals run, from heart to heart the bright hope glows. The seekers of the light are one. One in the freedom of the truth, one in the joy of paths untrod, one in the soul's perennial youth, one in the larger thought of God. The freer step, the fuller breath, the wide horizon's grander view, the sense of life that knows no death, the life that maketh all things new.
Thank you, Billy. Please join us in reading our closing words. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. I will now extinguish my chalice. If you have a chalice or flame at home, you may do the same. We extinguish this flame of communal worship and now carry its light within us. We share this light and we carry its warmth to all whom we meet. And now, with a blessing, Reverend Mary.
Thank you. Friends, may you go from this place not simply to get to your destination, but to instead embrace the journey. Lean into the liminal spaces, linger in the in-between, and notice the sacredness of the threshold stone on which you stand, as you are neither still in the place you were or already in the place you will be. But today, choose to just be, celebrating this time for what it is. Welcome yourself to the here and now, to the grace that awaits to embrace you, just as you are, beloved and becoming. Go in peace.